Welcome to the Sean Trey Show. I've got an awesome guest with me today. Would you like to tell people who you are and what you do?
Yes, so my name is Brett Campbell. It's an interesting question every time I get asked this because I think there's about, probably 10 different Brett Campbells depending on the setting and scenario, right? If I'm on a podcast talking about relationships or parenthood, I'm obviously, father first, father at heart. If we're on a business podcast, I'm, what I would call a crazy entrepreneur. I like to start, build, grow, scale, sell, start, build, grow, scale businesses. It's something that keeps me, and entrepreneurs will understand this, and you'd understand this yourself. It's that what calms my mind is chaos.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm an entrepreneur, father, friend, brother, you name it. I'm sure you'll find out and you'll be able to make your own assessment at the end of this podcast.
That's awesome. No. That's an interesting thing that you pointed out, because a lot of people, when you ask that question, those aren't the same things. Who are you and what do you do are completely different questions, and they are very separate. But it's interesting that as an entrepreneur, what do you find gets you going? What is it that gets your creative juices flowing as an entrepreneur?
Momentum, first and foremost. So it's about how do I put myself into places of momentum, and what I've uncovered over the years, call it the last 15 years, I would say I've been what I'd call a true entrepreneur, where I've been out building my own businesses and sort of taking my own steps, is the ability to solve problems. I just love solving problems, and I joke around quite often as the reason why so many problems come to me is because the universe is providing me with an opportunity to solve them. So for me, it's that ability to be able to find a problem, solve a problem, and then move on to the next problem. I'm not what you'd call the typical, let's nurture this problem for the next 10 years and see if we can squeeze every piece of juice out of it. For me, it's like I'm on to the next orchard.
That's awesome. This is an interesting topic because COVID presented a set of unique challenges to many people. For me, one of the things is I have my own business and I was running that with my wife, and then suddenly COVID hit, and we had a new piece to that equation, and that was we also now had to homeschool our daughter. And it was this, it was a very, you have these types of challenges, these types of for your business, these types of challenges for parenting. And then there was this new thing of like, well, how do we educate our child? And one of the things that during that time, I don't know how well I succeeded, but did the best I could. But one of the things that I really focused in on was basing and addressing the concept of teaching my daughter about problems and solutions, and looking and framing so much of her education with that. She would get frustrated and say, okay, here's your problem. Let's identify the problem. And that was one of the things that was I found was the most important, was identifying, really figuring out what is the problem, not dwelling on it, but figuring out and then moving into a solution. Now, what is your process for addressing problems and finding solutions? How do you go about that?
It's definitely evolved over time. Obviously, my initial, to give some context, my initial way of solving problems was to run head first into it, bite down on the mouth guard and run straight into it and go, okay, I'm here. Let's look at this. Have we tried this? What about this? What about this? Not really taking into account the collateral damage that may cause, or the ability to sometimes make the problem bigger than what it actually is to end up finding the solution throughout that. But for me, is over the years of becoming more self-aware and harnessing the ability to critically think something through and go back to first principles, and it's the old. I've had a phone call before from my wife when I was away, and she rings me. She goes, "The TV's not working." I'm like, "Oh, okay," and she goes, "Yeah, I've got the remote and I've tried to turn the TV on. It's not going on. I don't know what's going on." I said, "Is it on at the wall?" And she walks over and she goes, "Oh my God, it's turned off. Who turned it off?" I'm like, "Well, I didn't, but it's off." So go back to first, like, what's the first potential case scenario of something happening? Because a lot of people try and look for this crazy, it has to be something, that's so far out of the realm to be solved. Is I would just go back to the first basic principles. Is it on the wall? Okay. And then work your way through. And I probably through business and marketing specifically, because for me, marketing is all about the entire customer experience, the customer journey, right? And taking something from absolutely nothing, from ideation all the way through to how do you get a customer to stay, pay, refer, become your biggest ambassador, etc. There's micro steps along the entire chain.
Yeah.
So my ability to, whilst I'm a very, very big thinker, I have the ability to bring it back to the analytical component of, okay, what's the first step, then what happens? And not like what's step one and then what's step two. It's like what's step one, then what's step 1.1,
Yeah.
then what's step 1.112, like to be able to break it down to the finite until there's nothing left there. I think that was a learned skill from my days as a cabinet maker. So I got kicked out of high school when I was 16, and the only job in my town was an apprenticeship. So I became a cabinet maker. So very different back then. We were given basically a 1D drawing of a kitchen. There was basically some squares drawn on it and go, here's the kitchen's going to fit in here. And we had to then take that 1D drawing and turn it into a fully finished kitchen. Right, so everything from drawing it out to creating a cutting list to cutting it to getting the most out of each sheet of Meltica, which is what you use for your cabinet. So that was a learned skill along the way, and I adopt that to problem solving. It's like, okay, how big is the problem? What are we looking to solve here? Let's go back to not what's the Band-Aid. A lot of the times I'll go, is there an easy win? Right, so if I'm ever consulting even a business and I'm going into a business, I know there's some severe issues with this, and this, but I won't address that immediately because we need to just put some Band-Aids over the holes in the boat first so it doesn't sink completely. Then we can go back and start from a basic principle of step one, right?
Yeah.
So it's quite a methodical process, which now for me, because I guess I've probably done my apprenticeship in solving problems over time, and that I'm going to get a lot more as we proceed in life. But it's that ability to stop, not overreact, which again comes back to the ability to be self-aware. If you ever hear someone yelling out, "There's a bomb," you'll see 90% of people just get up and run any which way.
Right.
Where I would go, okay, fuck, there's a bomb. Like, wait on a minute, where is this bomb? Where could it be? Before I even took a step, I would have had 23 thoughts around trying to devise my plan. So
I remember once I was driving home. I was driving home from work, and I'm driving down this road, and it was really rainy weather, and the rivers had started to flood, and it was California, and in California, people don't understand that the rain makes the road slippery, and people just keep kind of going the same speed. And this guy was driving down this road, and he started hydroplaning, flipped over, dropped into the river. And it wasn't a deep river, but it was flowing and the car was sinking. I remember pulling over, my brain went into, and I attribute this to studying martial arts. And I had an awesome teacher who taught us how to break things down and stay calm under fire. And I was just like, all right, pulled over, put the car in park. That was my first step. Step one, pull over, get my car to a safe place, put it in park. Walked over to the river, and there were people, just everyone was standing, looking at the car sink. And I was like asking, is there anyone inside? And people were like, I don't know. And I was like, let's get down there and check. I got down to the car, and I was like, I need to get this window open. And I was like, does anyone have anything to break the window? Again, people standing there staring. And some guy comes out, I got a golf club. And I was like, all right, give me the golf club, smash the window. And then the next step was reach in, and I felt a hand grab my hand. And I was like, pulled the person out. And it was in that moment, like, maybe it wasn't the smartest, but yet it was just like getting through one thing at a time. And so many people, and I'm not trying to praise myself, but I'm saying people freeze. And I think people hit adversity and they get paralyzed. And I've seen it so many times that people just lock up, And I think
because they don't think, they have a lack of ability to know how to think. Like, we're not taught how to think in schools.
No.
Right, which is the biggest issue I see, is the ability to actually think through something, and instead of being reactive, how do you become active?
Yes.
Yeah, this actually happened today. I was driving into the office here, and I was there was 3 lanes going one way, 3 lanes going the other way. there was no cars, and this was a busy stretch of road. There was no cars coming towards us because the light ahead had stopped them. I literally stopped my car because to the right of me, in the middle of the other side of the road, there was this, about a meter long and half a meter wide piece of timber that had clearly flown off bloody someone's van or a ute or something like that.
Oh man.
I think you call them pickups over in America.
Yeah.
A ute over here in Australia. And I was like, oh, that's dangerous. Right, I was like, that's pretty dangerous. And there had been hundreds of cars in front of me that just driven past, right?
Oh,
and I'm like, I judged the situation. I was like, is this too dangerous for me to stop right now versus the danger of there's 3 cars coming towards us on the other side of the road, a couple of hundred meters down. Is the danger of me being able to stop here right now more dangerous than the 3 cars coming towards me? And the potential of one of them is going to hit it, or they're going to freak out and swerve into another car and not think about that because they're trying to avoid problem 1 without looking at problem 1 will cause problem 2, 3, 4, and 5, right? And that's how people who don't know how to critically think look at things. It's like, oh, there's a piece of timber, I'm going to swerve out the way, and then they take another car out next to them. And they're like, oh, I didn't even realize there was a car there. No, because you're looking at problem 1.
Yeah.
Right. So I literally stopped my car, put on the hazards, jumped out of the car. And this all happened in about 15 seconds. Jumped across the other road, grabbed this piece of timber, threw it off the highway, jumped back into my car, and carried on driving. Right? And if I hadn't done that, someone I guarantee would have hit that. They might have caused a crash or an accident, and someone may have got hurt. But I'm not talking about jumping into a pit of burning fire either. The ability for me to, because I've been in situations like that before where, I want to solve a problem, but I'm like, well, the effects of me potentially attempting to solve this problem is going to be worse than the actual outcome of this problem being solved.
Yeah, that's so true. There was, coming back to my daughter as well, and it was one of the things too, like I think that with children, we think that we've got it all figured out. We grew up and suddenly, but the reality is most people are stuck in their child mind, and,
yeah, absolutely.
And it's interesting because one of the things that I work with my daughter the most on is calming those emotions, and like calm that fire, because that reactive fire, and they're like, all right, don't scream. Daddy, what? There's a cockroach in here. Okay, is the cockroach going to hurt you? No. All right, now let's find a solution. Can we get a broom? Can we sweep it up? What can we do to handle that situation? And I think, one of the most important things, and I'm a huge fan of this, and I did you ever study any martial arts?
I haven't personally, no. I've got a lot of friends into it. I've always loved the art of it, but I've never actually. It's been one of those things that have always been on the list that I know I want to. Like, I was into wrestling as a kid, and not just the WWF wrestling, but actually wrestling. And I've always wanted to tick a box of getting started with martial arts. So
there's this great book. That's awesome. Get into it. You'll love it. But there was this great book about martial arts called Zen and the Art of Archery. And it's this classic written maybe 50, 60 years ago. And this guy went to Japan and learned Kyudo, the Japanese style of archery. And one of the things that he had to do was they just did the same thing. They did the same thing for 10 years. It was just like, dun, dun, and then the master was like, yeah, you still don't get it. And essentially the idea is they had all this rote practice so that they could learn to shut their brain down, to calm that reactive mind, and you have your planning done. There was one of my friends, Trey, came onto my podcast, and he used to work for the Night Stalkers. The Night Stalkers were the helicopter support for the special forces. And so essentially what they would do is keep all of these helicopters, flying that supported the Navy SEALs and Army Rangers. One of the things that he said is when they had some SEALs that came up and were about ready to go on a mission. And he said it was up in Afghanistan at the air base. And the guys got out a bunch of duct tape. And they put duct tape all on the ground in the shape of a house. And then they ran the drill. And he said they ran this drill through this taped out house. It was just duct tape, but they ran the drill, he said, for 5 hours. Boom. Woke up the next morning, ran the drill again. And he says, And he asked them, like, what are you guys doing? And they said, we're getting in here so that anything that happens, we are prepared for. Anything happens, we aren't going to, a cat jumps out, you expect it. You know, something else, something falls, you expect it. A door's locked, you expect it. You know, it was just this preparation is so key, and calming the mind.
Yeah, it's sets and reps. That's all it is. You want to get better at anything, it's sets and reps.
Yeah.
You know, you want to grow your muscles. Obviously, you got to tear your microscopic muscle fibers, done by sets and reps. If you want to grow your mindset, and if you want to grow your ability to not be scared when you should be strong, if you want to grow your mindset to be able to think through something instead of running into a burning fire, you need to have sets and reps of that.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, everything in history shows you that. You just need to look at repetition is the key.
Yeah.
Repetition, but also making sure that you're not just doing the same thing and expecting, you know, and you're not looking at all these other alternatives as well, right? So repetition is you know, they say the mother of all skill.
Yeah. There was that there was this cartoon that I saw. I see people posting all the time about success, and they show one guy digging down and he finds a diamond, and then there's another guy who's digging even deeper, and he's like about ready to give up, but there's like this bigger diamond underneath the ground, and it's like people don't realize we live in a society, a world society, that people think, and we're so conditioned now with social media to see like influencers and people like, you know, I put up this YouTube channel and now I'm making 500, you know, K a month. And it's like, maybe that happens, right? But the majority of those people actually had something that they put in time on, you know, and like you look at people that are really succeeding in something, and what you don't see is that there is stuff that happened behind the scenes. You know, the majority of people that are successful in life, you know, even if, you know, you pick a sports athlete, you know, there are thousands of hours put into practicing that jump shot. You know, someone like Steph Curry, he didn't just naturally become good at shooting. I'm sure that, you know, his dad was an NBA player, and every single day as a child, I'm sure he had a ball in his hands and he was dribbling it and shooting hoops every single day, you know, and that turned him into literally the greatest shooter of all time.
Yeah.
But it came from something.
Absolutely.
Now, if you were to tell advice to someone today, someone who wants to be an entrepreneur, what would you throw out there for them?
Well, my first question to them would be, do you really want to be an entrepreneur, or do you want what entrepreneurship gives you, or you think gives you?
Interesting.
Right? Because I truly feel entrepreneurship, whilst a lot of people may think that it's a skill and it can be learned, it can be taught, I disagree with that in many ways. So my first thought would be making sure that they don't go down a path for the wrong reasons. And, you know, this probably dawned on me about 6 years ago when I really got into a lot more, you know, public speaking. I was running a lot of events. I'd be speaking most weeks throughout the year. And at the time, because I guess I sort of got known per se in the businessy world from marketing, because that's what I've really used to really build and grow and scale and sell businesses. And a lot of my marketing workshops were geared to, before I give you any marketing tactics and strategies, there's some fundamental things that we need to uncover and figure out first and foremost, before you even go home and then try and learn this and go down the rabbit holes of psychology, influence, persuasion, and then social media and all of that stuff, right? I would quite often get people at the end of my workshop, whether it's a 60-minute, 90-minute, or a full day, 2-day workshop, coming up to me saying, "Thank you. I think you've just saved me the next 5 years of my life, because I now know that I actually don't want to do this."
Right.
I think there's so many people out there, and no discredit to it, because, I mean, everyone has, you know, well, generally most people have great intentions, you know, to inspire people to follow their dreams. I almost want to play the devil's advocate to that sometimes, going, well, hey, hold on a minute. Are you actually following your dream, or are you just following this this thing of being an entrepreneur, and entrepreneurs have heaps of money and they have all the time freedom that they want. And I mean, geez, I know a lot of business owners, a lot of entrepreneurs, and depending on what level you're at, you don't have a lot of time, you don't have a lot of money, you don't, you're generally, in many cases, for a lot of small business owners, you're the least paid person in your business.
Yeah.
You've got a really stressful, low-paying job, but you have all the pressure of making payroll. You're the director of the company or the LLC, so you have all the legal requirements, and so there's a lot wrapped up into it. So, for me, many years ago, I would have encouraged someone to go, okay, what do you like doing? Cool, you like doing that? Okay, let's go, bang, let's build you this business. Versus, hold on a minute, let's really think about this, because the decisions you make today are going to have layer 2, 3, 4, 5 effects, right? Entrepreneurship is very hard. Building businesses is very hard, especially if it doesn't come naturally to you.
Yeah.
Like if it doesn't come naturally to you, it's going to be even harder. Mm-hmm. And I'd probably encourage most people who want to be entrepreneurs to go and be a number 2, 3, 4 at a company. Go work at a company and be an entrepreneur inside of that company, and show the owners or the founders of that company why you need a piece of that.
Yeah.
There's so many multi-billionaires who have never even started a company.
Yeah.
Right. So it would be really getting super clear on why do you even want to become an entrepreneur first and foremost. Like, what is the reason? I became an entrepreneur. The natural driver for me was money. Mm-hmm. I wanted money. I come from a very low socioeconomic upbringing. We lived in a caravan park. Then we moved into social housing. I was anything I wanted, I had to work for and earn, and so that struggle for me growing up, I just knew what I didn't want, and I knew what I wanted. I needed money, so that was sort of my initial pull into the. It wasn't because I wanted to save the world or I wanted to, stop world hunger or whatever that was. It was, hey, I think the guys who I'm seeing who drive nicer cars and have nicer homes own their business in many cases. So that was the driver for me. It's obviously changed over time, but it's still a key driver as to why I would take on all the extra risk as an entrepreneur. So, I mean, the more you get to talk to me and know me, I no longer can answer a question very easily because there's so many layers to it, and a lot of conversations that people have are very superficial. Yeah. And I said to myself, a couple of years ago, that I just can no longer just be a mouthpiece of just pure positivity.
Right.
And it doesn't mean I want to be negative, but I need everyone else to know about all the other pieces that come along with it.
I love following some of the new neo-stoicism, Ryan Holiday and these guys are putting things out there that are really interesting. One of the things is that like this idea, like premeditatio malorum. It's like prepare for everything bad that could happen. You look at it, and it's not just that prepare for the bad, but like also look at if something is going to make you happy or not, and look at that, because I think that is, people will have different options placed in front of them. Maybe a person is looking at a career change, and on one side, they've got a job that pays an insanely large amount of money. And on the other side, they've got a job that would make them happy. And, you actually have to think about what is it that's important for you? Is it like, do you want more time with your family? And I'm not saying maybe you can have that on the extremely high paying job. Maybe you can't. Yeah. But you have to sit there and question, like, we've been conditioned to always chase one thing or other. And I'm not saying it's, money or not money. I'm saying people, all of us, have different values conditioned into us, and they're implanted into us at a small age. And you don't always ask questions about those core values that you are having placed in you. And I think that asking that question of, is this something that you really want? Whether that be, to change your hair color or to, to get in shape. That's a question you have to ask, because let's get in that taking someone getting into shape, right? Maybe maybe you're going to have to cut out things that you like. Maybe you're going to have to cut back on your steak intake. Maybe, and that's not going to feel comfortable.
Yeah.
But change inherently doesn't always feel comfortable. But if that's something that you want and you've identified that and there's a reason for that, then, look at that.
A big thing that I always look at when I hear, to be happy, again, it's what does happy even mean, and what level of happy are you really looking for? Because could you be a 6 out of 10 happy with your job because it's super high paying, but then that gives you a 9 out of 10 life outside of the job? So if you're seeking happiness in every area of your life, every minute of the day, you might as well go and get high on ayahuasca and just drift on off, right? But the reality is looking at what do you value most. And it's interesting, I ran a 2-day workshop for one of our companies for the ownership group last week. And one of the days was all business, but then the second day was all about lifestyle design. What type of lives do we all want to live? And what is that made up of? And challenging them to go, okay, well, who values holidays? Who values friendships? Who values, education, et cetera, and really challenging yourself to go, okay, this is the life I'd like to live, but in order to achieve these business goals that I've set, there's no way I could live this life right now. So you have to make the trade-off, and you just have to be aware of it.
Yeah.
Like when I built my first company in the fitness space, I'd literally work 15, 16-hour days, sometimes even more, right? I'd get up at 4 a.m., build info products, get up and then move into the office at 9 a.m. to build our franchise and so on and so forth. But it was because I knew there was an end goal for it. So I was more than prepared to do that. So I was happy to make the trade-offs at that time.
Yeah.
I didn't really hang out with friends very often because I was just too busy looking at business and trying to build business and create the next new thing. But it really comes back to, again, is what does happiness look like, and do you really need to have that level of happiness in that specific area? Because people, when you do your standard, hierarchy of values output, and you're doing a workshop, you look at all the different areas in your life, right? We've all seen them before. It's you look at your familial, you look at your social, you look at your financial, your career, vocational, etc. And give them a rating out of 10. And that's a real quick, easy, basic exercise anyone can do. And I do it quite often just to sort of check in to see where I'm at with. And you might be at a 4 out of 10 with your social network, right, with your friendship group. But you could be high in all these other areas. Are you going to sit there and go, oh my God, my friendship group is terrible. I need to get this up to an 8 or a 9. Now, if you truly desire that and it's something that gives you even more momentum to move forward, then you should put some actions in place and do that. It's literally as easy as booking in. So I do this every Friday. I book in a game of golf with a mate. So it'll be a different mate. I rotate every Friday. It's how I fill that void, right?
Yeah.
Now, you've got to make sure that you're not trying to, because you can listen to podcasts, you can go to workshops and you go to events, and all these things are really great and inspiring, but then you're left with this false reality that you're trying to create, and you haven't really looked at it and asked the simple questions going, fuck, do I even really want this business? Do I even really want to still be in this friendship? Why am I still working at it? Why am I continuously still trying to mend this relationship in my family when I'm the only one trying to be the person mending it? It's like, let it go. Let's put it in the garage and park it until they may decide to reach out, right? Versus banging our heads against the wall consistently trying to live this, what people don't define as happy, right?
Yeah. Well, and one of the things too is this plays into something I was driving home with my wife this morning, and I was talking about a topic, and I said, when I interview, higher level business people, there's one thing that I find as this interesting similarity. That the one asset that these people are really interested in and are very conscious of is time, and the amount of energy that is invested in different things. Because, like you said on that friendship thing, if you had endless number of hours in a day, certainly you could work to get everything up to 10. But we don't. We are dealing with a finite amount of time and a finite amount of energy every day.
Yep.
And you have to pick and choose, like you said, where you're putting your energy. It's literally like, you have a certain amount of water that you're going to put into a garden. What plants do you want to grow? Because you don't always have enough for everything. And so that's a really interesting concept. Do you mind if we go back a little bit? How did you find this path? It was interesting that you said that you were working with cabinets. Well, how did that transition to where you were at now?
Yeah, well, I guess growing up, and this is why I mentioned a little bit earlier around, I don't think everyone's an entrepreneur. I think it's an innate thing, and you either harness it or you don't harness it. And I was a kid growing up. Again, I didn't know no different. We lived in a caravan park, and then when we moved from Australia to New Zealand, we were in public housing, commission housing. One side of the street was the mongrel mob gang, and then on the other side of the street was the black power gang. So I was this little white kid growing up in a Polynesian sort of area, and I loved it. I had a lot of fun, but I always knew I was different. Like I was always different. I always wanted more, and yeah, even down to and I trace back this because I did a bit of a timeline situation when I wrote my first book many years ago. It was really about looking at, and this is such a cool exercise that I reckon everyone should give a crack to, is go back to your earliest memory you could ever have, and then go year by year and try and highlight as many significant memories that you have throughout those years. It's quite a trip down memory lane. I was ringing my mum and family and going, "Hey, did anything happen when I was this age? What happened here?" But I always knew I was different as a kid. I was even different to my mates. I was sort of the ringleader, so to speak. I was the person who was always sort of encouraging us to do this or let's go do that. And I always had this desire whenever we drive past nice houses and nice cars, I'd be like, I want one of those. Why? And then it was the question of why can't I have one?
Yeah.
And then, through high school, I just sort of rested on my laurels. I was, had the ability to talk my way out of a paper bag, so it sort of got me through school pretty easily. But it was the thing that got me kicked out. So I got kicked out of school because I ended up my last year of high school. I was just talking too much, and my teacher's like, "Mate, you're just disturbing all your mates now." So when I took on my first apprenticeship, the first day where my boss was showing me around the factory, I wanted to own the factory. Like I was like, okay, how do I own this business?
Nice.
Because he had the nice car and he had a couple of houses, right? And I was like, okay, so that's what success looks like. Because again, small town, there was no social media to see all this glitz and glamour online, right? So I was like, this is what it's about. Okay, so I'll be the richest guy in Huntley in this little town. So the desire was always there, but it took many years. It wasn't until I was 24, I decided to pack my bags, suitcase and golf clubs in hand, and move back to Australia, where I am now in Gold Coast, Queensland, to start a brand new life. I didn't know what it was. I started as a personal trainer. I quickly realised that, I didn't just want to trade time for money because I was, wanting more and more and more. And then I understood leverage, and then that's where my real education sort of started taking off, where I became obsessed with marketing, and the rest is history.
That's awesome. It's interesting that you go back to education because what if that seed that you had, because the potential was there for you, you're pointing that out, it was there, but it was not being watered in our education system.
Correct.
I
didn't know what it was. All my life, I felt like I just wanted an older brother. I had an older sister. Mm-hmm. I felt there was this urge inside me that I wish I had an older brother. But it wasn't an older brother that I was actually seeking. It was a mentor.
Yes.
Because I grew up, we left my father when I was 4 years old, and my mother met a gentleman who's now my stepfather. They've been together ever since. But total opposite person to me, no drive at all, happy to do the work, happy to tick boxes and put a warm meal on the table for us. And, we never went without, so to speak, but there was never any ambition for anything more. You do your one holiday a year, we'd go camping. But I just had this urge. I was just like, I want more, and I need to do more, and I can't. The biggest part is I knew Like, I knew I could do more. And this is for those entrepreneurs out there who just know, like, you know that you can do more.
It's like an itch.
You'll be listening to this right now and you're like, fuck, that's me. That's yes. And because you know, and I mean, I've taken the last, as I was saying to you, because I'm a father, oh, I'd say new father, but she's 18 months old now. So it's
awesome.
times travel quick. But, you know, just prior to her being born, I sort of stepped back out of all the businesses and, you know, taken a bit of hiatus for the last 18 months. And it's been the last sort of 6 months that urge inside of me has just been boiling back up. And I'm like, okay. Here I was thinking I was going to be retired, but I just can't. Like I know. And then I'm having this conversation with myself going, mate, you know you can do way more, and you know you're capable of doing way more, and you know you're going to. It's just a matter of when you're going to pull this trigger and da-di-da-di-da, right? So it was that innate feeling of I know.
Yeah.
And when you know, right?
You do. It literally, it's like, I describe it as like that fire, that itch. It just, there's nothing you can do to feed it. It's
the momentum, right? It's momentum boiling up, and as soon as it gets shot out, there's no holding back. And that's why, like, another reason why I identified that I haven't taken martial arts up yet. I'm a type of all or nothing guy.
Yeah.
Right. If I commit to something, I'm committing to it. Doesn't mean I'm going to see it all the way through, because one lesson I learned with my apprenticeship is I knew from day one that it wasn't the thing that I wanted to do, nor should do, but I stuck at it based off, my mum's advice at the time was stick at it, because, you never know in life, if you ever need to fall back on it, you can, right? Great advice, not, but she done the best of what she could, right? Yeah. But for me, it was that ability to then identify when I commit to certain things, it's okay to actually stop them as well. I think there's this mentality around the world where it's like, no, you got to see it all the way through. You use that metaphor the other few minutes ago about you're digging for diamonds, and the guy stops, walks around, and turns back, and there's diamonds in front of him. You know what? That's going to happen to you many times in life, and it's okay. Don't dwell on it. Just make sure though that when you put your pick on your back and you're turning around and walking back out of the cave with nothing, just know that, hey, if there was to be a diamond there, you're happy with the decision to cut it right now.
Yeah.
Right. So you feel like you've tried everything and you've turned over every stone possible. It's okay, because there's always going to be those situations that happen.
Yeah. Well, that's that's what I was thinking. Like, every time I see that cartoon, like, and everyone's like, "Oh, he's still digging and he's quitting. It's such a failure." And I was like, there's 1,000 other things that character could be doing. Maybe he goes outside and he starts a different type of a business. Maybe he becomes an appraiser. Maybe he goes out and gets into marketing. Maybe it's like that very binary way of thinking. It has to be this or this. When life is not that way. Life is a way that, there was a great guy that I had on that he was an extreme sports athlete. And one of the things that he talked about was he always was trying to get into the flow state. And he says, I can't describe it, but he's like, I know when I get it. And it's just like this synchronicity where everything starts flowing for him. And he's like, and it's like, he'll walk into this room and suddenly there's this person that he's always been wanting to meet. And he's like, that's how his life is defined by the flow state. And I was like, how does that feel? He's like, it can be a bit exhausting at times, but that's what he follows, because for him, he has to understand and it has to feel right for him. And like that's an interesting.
Yeah, the feel is everything. It's when you can follow your intuition and just know that you're in the right place at the right time, which here's the bombshell, is every time.
Right.
You're always in the right place at the right time. Just know that. And when you can be comfortable with that, that's how I look at the creation of flow. And I know when I'm in flow is when I've finished a game of golf and I haven't even really thought about a shot.
Yeah.
That's when I know my scorecard is smick, right? Yeah. Where I go wrong is I'll get to maybe hole 16, and this has happened to me many times. I'll get to like hole 16, I'll be like, shit, I've played 16 holes of golf. And then I'm thinking about hole 17 and 18, and then I'll wreck my entire game.
Yep.
Yeah, I've done that so many times, but that's that thing of when you start thinking about something, when you have to think about, imagine trying to tie your shoe. Go try that now. Imagine thinking about everything that you're doing to tie your shoe right now. It'd be so clunky.
Yeah.
because you can do it subconsciously now, right? You can do it automatically. You don't need to think about the creating a loop and whatever rabbit runs around the tree or however you learn how to tie shoes, right? Or maybe like me, you just don't have shoelaces anymore. You just have shoes that don't need it. So you cut out things that you don't need to do. It'll save memory space in your brain. But it's that ability to not think about it. You know why? Because we mentioned this a little bit earlier. Is because we've already put the sets and the reps.
Oh.
You're not thinking about how to do a choke on someone or put them in a leg lock because you've done that 1,000 times at training.
Yeah.
It just naturally, seamlessly moves into, oh wow, how'd that happen?
Yep. There was I remember when we met this kid from Japan. And my teacher was a really great martial artist, great guy. But he liked to train tons of techniques, and he was like, "Oh, we're gonna learn this new technique." We met this one kid who came over and had been training at the Kodokan in Japan, main Japanese like judo dojo. And we're like, "All right, want to show us?" He's like, "What do you practice every day?" "I practice sewi nage." "What else?" No. "I practice sewi nage every day." We're like, "You practice one throw every day?" We're like, "Dude, come on, you got one technique?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm quite good at it." And we're like, "Yeah, right." Boom! We went up in a match against him, got every single person. And the idea was he was just so damn good at that one technique that he's like, and we're like, "How do you do that?" He's like, "I don't know. I just feel it," because he didn't have to think. His body just was like, "Oh, just feel, there it is." Boom. And it just came.
Yeah.
And it was just like, it was literally the idea in Buddhism was called mushin, no mind. This mental state of you're operating without thinking. And it's like you said in golf. I don't have it from a martial arts reference, but I played volleyball when I was growing up. And there was one day that I can still remember, I had a perfect game. And I don't know what I did, but I didn't do anything. I was dealing with other stuff, and I just was like, boom. And every single time I tried to have a game like that after, never could play a game like that. But it was just like, and it was just, I didn't think about it the whole game. And it was literally like, it was the most fun I ever had. And I think that might have been part of it. I was just in the present.
Presence is everything.
Right. Now, if you could go back in time to a younger version of yourself, what advice would you give yourself?
When I was 8 years old, it was my birthday, and I got attacked by a dog. I'd probably go back and say, "Mate, the dog's coming, so get out of the way." It was my birthday party, and all my mates left and ran and climbed up a tree, and I'm standing going, "What are you doing?" And this dog got me. But in all seriousness, if there was an age that I could go back to, I mean, I think about this stuff quite a lot, and my answer always changes based on how I feel right now.
Yeah.
Which it should, right, in many cases. But for me, I think that the message that I would want to tell myself is that it's okay, trust yourself. Like I was on this massive hunt for, when I say I wanted an older brother, which was really, I needed a mentor, I needed some role models. But I really came into my own when I started to just trust myself.
I like that.
And back my intuition. I am extremely intuitive, and I could go back and I would say 7 times out of 10, if I follow my intuition, I'm right. So I always follow my intuition because I know I'm happy to get punched in the head 3 times out of 10. For 7 wins. So following my intuition, and when you understand and study intuition and what it is and what it means, and when I said we are in the right place right now, because we are, and there's nothing that we can do about it, right? So taking it back to that finite, if you can't unreconcile that, then you have to face that as the reality, and if that's the reality, then that's what it is. So the ability to follow my intuition and be confident and back myself. Even though as a kid you would never have seen me as a shy kid who was reserved, but Dan, there's a lot of times that I doubted myself and didn't do things.
Right. I remember once what was it? We were in college, and my friends, there was a resort in our town that all the college kids would sneak into and go swimming. And my friends were like, let's go swimming. And I was like, I am not getting in that water. There is something wrong tonight. Everything in me is telling me we're wrong. We need to go. We need to go now. And my friends were like, let's just wait 15 more minutes. Cops walked in. Everyone got busted for sneaking in there. And it was like, I knew. And if I had have listened to my intuition, it wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, I mean, no matter what your beliefs are, whether it's religious or spiritual, you cannot deny that there is something that occurs outside of us.
Yeah.
And coincidence is no longer the right word for it.
Agree entirely. Now, if you had Aladdin's lamp, what would you wish for?
Whew, Aladdin's lamp. I'd wish for the ability to live forever until the time that I decide to check out. That'd be nice. And while I'm at it, and the people that I choose to be on that ride with me. Not really sure, to be honest. I mean, outside of the superficial things, like, give me a nice big boat and a nice, another XYZ portfolio and this and that. I probably don't. One thing that I've learned to love and actually excites me is that we are the makers of our own destiny. Like, we're the makers of our own outcomes. And whilst I'd like to wish for something or, have it happen immediately, I get a lot of I get fulfillment out of the journey of achieving something. Like, you could go and pick any car, give me a Bugatti, you could give it to me tomorrow. I'd be happy with it, of course. Let's not get that wrong. But if I worked for that and bought that Bugatti myself, I mean, the difference is like black and white.
Yeah. So
I get a lot of fulfillment outside. I am not someone who sits there and really wishes for things.
Yeah.
Which is probably why it's hard for me to answer. If I had give me an hour to sit and really think about it, I'll probably come up with something, much greater. But for me, it's the ability to be on that journey.
I love that.